I'm 45, and I thought I'd made peace with the worst day of my life, or at least I thought I'd learned how to survive it. 3 years ago, my 16-year-old daughter Emily vanished without a trace on her way home from school. No note, no calls, no footage. Her phone was found 2 days later in a storm drain 10 miles away. The police treated it like a runaway case, but I knew my daughter. She didn't run. She had plans. College, a scholarship, dance rehearsals. She was the type to triple-check her calendar, color-code her textbooks, and never miss a curfew. That day, she texted me at 4:12 p.m. saying she'd be home by 4:45. She never walked through the door. What came after that was a blur of police reports, missing person flyers, grief counselors, and news vans parked outside my house like they were waiting for a finale. But there wasn't one. No new leads, no ransom calls, just silence. And eventually, people moved on, except for me. You never move on from your child disappearing. You just learn how to fake it better around other people. My husband Mark didn't handle it well. He threw himself into work and therapy, and eventually, another relationship. I can't even say I blame him. We divorced a year after Emily disappeared. It wasn't bitter. It was just two broken people trying to breathe without choking each other. So I stayed in our house. The same house Emily grew up in, because a small, deranged part of me thought that maybe, if by some miracle she came back, she'd come here first. And then, last Thursday night, just after dinner, someone knocked on my door. I remember I was still holding my glass of wine when I opened it. I wasn't expecting anyone. Definitely not the girl standing there. Brown hair, blue hoodie, no shoes. She looked about 20, maybe a little younger, pale, thin, and her hands were shaking. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Hi, I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to go." I asked her if she needed help, if she was lost, but she just kept staring at me. Then her voice cracked as she said the words that made the glass slip right out of my hand. "I think you're my mom." I stood frozen, heart thudding so hard I could barely hear anything else. My wine glass had shattered across the tile, but I didn't move to clean it. I just stared at her, this trembling girl who called me mom. For a second, I couldn't speak. All I could do was search her face, desperately trying to find something familiar. Her eyes were the right shape, her nose, maybe, but she was taller than Emily had been. Her voice was raspier, her posture more closed off, like she'd spent years curling in on herself to survive. I asked her name. She hesitated, looked down, then said, "Emily." It didn't hit me like I thought it would. Maybe I'd imagined this moment so many times that I expected it to feel different, bigger, louder, more dramatic, but instead I just felt this creeping numbness, like my brain couldn't catch up. I asked her for a last name. She said it right. She knew it. My maiden name, too. Then she rattled off our address, our actual address, like she was reciting it from memory. And then she asked if she could come in. I didn't know what else to do, so I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, like someone afraid of waking up a dream. I noticed she had a limp, barefoot with a bloody heel, like she'd been walking for a long time. She looked around the house like it was familiar and foreign all at once. Then she pointed at the hallway. "That used to be the dance room, right?" My breath caught in my throat. No one ever called it that but Emily. It was just the spare room, but she'd always referred to it as her dance room after we let her push the furniture aside and practice in there. She used to spend hours there after school, headphones in, feet moving across the floor. That one word, used, hit me harder than anything else. I didn't even realize I was crying until I tasted the salt on my lips. I asked her where she'd been. She didn't answer right away. She sat down on the couch, hugged a pillow to her chest like a child, and whispered, "It's complicated." Then she added, "They didn't let me have a name for a while." That sentence was enough to turn my legs to jelly. I had to sit down. I wanted to ask 100 things all at once. Who were they? What happened? How did she escape? Why now? But all I could manage was, "Are you safe?" She nodded, eyes locked on the floor. That's when I noticed the faint outline of a bruise along her collarbone. Her wrists looked raw, healed over cuts maybe, and a small tattoo I'd never seen before. Just a tiny crescent moon, barely visible behind her ear. My stomach twisted. This girl was broken. She looked like someone who'd been through hell and crawled out the other side with only scraps of herself left. I asked her if she needed a doctor. She begged me not to call anyone, not the hospital, not the police. Said she just needed to be somewhere quiet, somewhere she felt safe, that she didn't want to go back to them. Again, them. I didn't press. I just told her she could stay the night. I made up the guest bed. She didn't want pajamas or food, just water. I brought her a pair of old sweatpants and a hoodie that used to belong to Mark, and she thanked me like I'd just given her a miracle. She fell asleep within minutes. I sat outside her room the entire night, staring at the closed door, wondering if the girl inside was really mine. wondering if maybe I was going crazy. Because here's the thing. Emily had a birthmark, a tiny one, on her right shoulder. It looked like a smudge. I used to kiss it when she was a baby. Every time she got dressed, it would peek out from her shirt. And the girl in my guest room? When she leaned over to drink water from the glass, her shoulder was bare, and the birthmark wasn't there. I didn't sleep. How could I? I just sat there, staring at the door, mind spinning. The girl inside was asleep, peaceful even. Like she hadn't just walked back into the life she disappeared from 3 years ago. Like she hadn't dropped a bomb on everything I'd carefully tried to hold together. But that birthmark, or the lack of it, that shook me. I kept replaying the moment in my head, convincing myself I could be wrong. Maybe I remembered it wrong. Maybe it faded with age, or maybe the lighting was off. But deep down, I knew better. A mother doesn't forget something like that. I would have bet my life on it. And yet, everything else she said felt right. The details, her memory of the house, the way she called the couch in the den, the sleepy couch, like she used to when she was little, even the way she chewed the inside of her cheek when she got nervous. Emily used to do that too, but there were cracks, just small ones, little pauses before she answered certain questions. A moment when she called my dad Grandpa Joe, even though he hated being called Joe and always insisted on Pops. Emily knew that. She used to tease him about it. And then there was the bracelet. Emily had this charm bracelet she wore everywhere. It was a gift from her grandma, my mom, who passed away 5 years ago. She never took it off, not once. It was like her talisman, her anchor. When she disappeared, it was the first thing I looked for. It was never found. But this girl, she didn't have it. Not in her pockets, not on her wrist, nowhere. And when I asked casually what happened to it, she just said, "Oh, I must have lost it." Emily wouldn't lose that bracelet, not in years. By the time morning came, I was a wreck. My hands were shaking as I poured coffee, nerves frayed raw. When she finally came into the kitchen, hair tied up, looking like someone who'd slept 1,000 years, I could barely keep my voice steady. I offered her breakfast. She said she wasn't hungry. I asked if she was ready to talk. She said soon. And then she asked something that chilled me to the bone. She looked around the kitchen, then said, "Do we still keep the knives in the second drawer?" That drawer hadn't been the knife drawer since the remodel, almost 2 years after she disappeared. But before that? Yeah, that's exactly where they were. She hadn't just memorized the house. She remembered living here. I felt sick, confused. Every minute that passed made it harder to trust my instincts. Either I was going crazy or something deeply wrong was happening, and I didn't know which one was worse. But I knew I couldn't do this alone, so I made a decision I hadn't made in over a year. I called Mark. He picked up on the second ring. When I told him Emily was back, he went dead silent. Then he said he'd be over in 10 minutes. Mark showed up in 7 minutes. He didn't even knock, just walked right in, like he still lived there. I was too stunned to care. When he saw her sitting at the kitchen table, drinking orange juice out of her old I Love NY mug, he froze. His eyes widened, his mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Then, slowly, he said her name, Emily. She looked up and smiled. "Hi, Dad." My heart twisted. He sat down across from her, visibly shaken. I could see the conflict on his face, the same one I'd been wrestling with all night. She looked like, sounded like her, but there was something not quite right. Mark asked questions. Simple ones, like what she remembered, where she'd been, how she got back. She told a story that sounded both rehearsed and vague. She'd been taken by a man she met online, someone who promised her freedom, but turned out to be controlling and violent. She didn't know where she was being kept, only that it was far, cold, and always dark. He never gave her a real name. She was told not to speak unless spoken to. She said there were other girls at first, then fewer, then none. She escaped 2 weeks ago, she claimed. When he left the door unlocked, she ran, hitched rides, walked for miles. She didn't go to the police because she was scared. Scared he'd find her. Scared no one would believe her. Scared of being locked up in a hospital again. The story was horrifying, but also too clean, too simple, too perfect. Mark listened. His eyes stayed on her the whole time, but his body leaned slightly back, subconsciously putting space between them. Then he looked at me. I could tell by his face he felt it too. Something was off. Then came the moment that shattered any illusion of normal. He asked her what happened the day she disappeared. She blinked. Her voice faltered for the first time. She said she didn't remember much, just that she got in the car. Then blackness. Mark asked, "What car?" She hesitated. "His," she said. "The man's car." Mark's eyes narrowed. "What color was it?" She said silver. Mark shook his head slowly. "Emily got into a red SUV," he said. "We have it on a neighbor's dash cam." It was one of the few leads police ever had. They released the video. It was all over the news. The girl froze. Then quickly, she said, "That must have been someone else's car. Maybe he switched it. I don't know." It was a weak cover. Too weak. And that's when I saw it, just for a split second. A flicker. A twitch in her jaw, in her expression. Not fear, not confusion. Annoyance. Like she was irritated she'd slipped up. Mark looked at me again, and this time, his expression was harder. He didn't say it out loud, but I knew exactly what he was thinking. This girl is not our daughter. I felt it in my bones the second Mark stood up. Something inside him had shifted. His face was calm, but too calm. The way he looked at her now, it wasn't the look of a father reunited with his child. It was cautious, careful, like she was a wild animal he didn't want to startle. She noticed it too. Her smile faded, her shoulders stiffened. She suddenly looked smaller, like she was retreating back into herself. But her eyes didn't show fear. They showed calculation, watching us closely. Mark thanked her for sharing her story and said he needed to make a phone call. She nodded slowly, but didn't ask who he was calling. That's what made my skin crawl. It was like she already knew. He stepped outside, phone pressed to his ear, pacing across the porch like he used to when bills were overdue or work was falling apart. I stood frozen in the kitchen, trying not to let my thoughts spiral. She was still sitting at the table, sipping orange juice, her eyes fixed on me now, like she was waiting for me to say something, challenge her, call her out, but I couldn't, not yet. So I asked a simple question, one I thought only Emily would know. What was the name of the cat we buried in the backyard? She blinked, thought for a moment, then smiled. Mittens. My blood turned cold, because that cat's name wasn't Mittens. It was Daisy. Mittens was the cat I had as a child, decades ago. I'd mentioned him once, to Emily when she was 8. I even showed her a picture of me holding him in a family album. There's no way she should have confused them, unless she had read about them, or heard about them. My mouth went dry. I stepped back, heart pounding so loud I thought she could hear it. Mark came back inside 5 minutes later. His face was grim. "She needs to come with me," he said. "We're going to the police." The girl didn't move. She stared at him, her voice suddenly flat. "I didn't do anything wrong." Mark didn't flinch. "Then you've got nothing to worry about." She looked at me, not pleading, not panicking, just studying. "I thought you'd be happy I came back," she said. The tone in her voice made me feel like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, with nothing to hold on to. Then, with a sigh, she stood. "No one ever wants the broken ones," she whispered. She walked toward the front door like she'd already rehearsed this part too. And before I could process it, she turned and added, "But you were right about the birthmark. I burned it off." And then she left. Mark drove her to the station while I sat alone in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the table so hard my knuckles went white. Every clock ticked louder than it should. The glass she drank from still sat on the counter, and I couldn't bring myself to touch it. She said she burned it off. The birthmark, that wasn't something you just say. That was something. Mark called me 2 hours. The girl gave a name. Not Emily. Not a fake, a real, full name. One that matched a missing person filed in another state nearly 5 years ago. A girl who disappeared at parents divorced, bounced between, slipped through the cracks. Here's the part that makes sense. Is Sarah, and that name means nothing, or at least, except something, and wouldn't let go, because I'd heard once. In the weeks after, when I went down in similar, I remembered seeing someone claim it was buried. I read it, blinked. What are the odds? The one who, is that Sarah? What are the odds that because the police asked and she told them she remembered our address from that sentence cracked something I hadn't touched in years. Because here's the thing, about 6 months before she disappeared, she went through a phase where she had to help people. Volunteering, after-school tutoring, dance class for underprivileged kids. I encouraged it. She was so passionate, so eager. There was a program she joined, a weekend mentorship thing for girls in the foster system. Her school counselor recommended it. Just 3 sessions. She never told me much about it. But now I wonder, was Sarah Monroe there? Did she meet my daughter? Did she know her? The police think she may have formed a connection, maybe even an obsession. One of the officers said, carefully, that it wouldn't be the first time a missing child tried to fill the space of someone else's life. They call it identity displacement. But what I can't stop thinking is, what if she didn't just try to become Emily? What if she had something to do with Emily vanishing? 3 days after she left with Mark, the police came back to my house with a search warrant. Not for me, for her. They combed through my guest room, took the pillowcase she slept on, the hoodie, the glass she drank from, even a strand of hair they found on the bathroom sink. DNA test. Routine, they said. Needed to confirm her identity, but I could tell by the way they moved, too careful, too quiet, that something wasn't adding up on their end either. That night, I got a call from Detective Mallory. I'll never forget how still I had to sit just to hear her voice through the static. "We found something," she said, "but you need to prepare yourself. The DNA didn't match Emily. That wasn't surprising, but it didn't match Sarah Monroe either. It matched no one. No missing persons report, no federal database, nothing. As far as the system was concerned, this girl, whoever she was, didn't exist. They ran the name Sarah Monroe again, dug into the case deeper. Turns out the real Sarah Monroe had been found in Florida almost 2 years ago, alive, in recovery, different family now. She's okay. So who was my Sarah? I still don't know. What I do know is this. The girl had a notebook on her when they picked her up, folded into the lining of her hoodie. At first glance, it looked like a diary, pages of scribbled thoughts, names, places. But tucked into the middle were 3 sheets of paper that didn't match the rest. They were printouts, old social media posts, Emily's. The captions were things only a parent would recognize. Inside jokes, photos of her in her dance outfits. One blurry image of her and me baking cookies. She must have pulled them from the internet, maybe through old public profiles. Some I thought were deleted. At the top of one sheet, she'd written, "I like her life better." I stared at those words for what felt like hours. This wasn't just someone looking for a place to stay. She was trying to be Emily. The officers asked if I wanted to press charges for trespassing, impersonation, psychological manipulation, but I said no. Because honestly, what would that fix? There's no justice in this. No neat ending. Just a broken girl wearing my daughter's face like a mask, and an empty room that still smells like lavender shampoo. They put her in psychiatric care. She hasn't spoken a word since the night she walked out of my house. Not even her real name. Nothing. But sometimes, late at night, I still see her. That last glance she gave me from the doorway, and I wonder, what if she wasn't just pretending? What if she believed she was Emily? Or worse, what if someone made her believe it? Because despite everything, despite the bruises, the memory gaps, the wrong answers, the missing birthmark, there was one thing she said that no one else could have known. She looked at me that first night and asked, "Do you still keep the knives in the second drawer?" We changed it after Emily disappeared. I never posted that anywhere. I never told anyone. So now I'm left with 2 options. Either this girl is a liar so clever she found a way inside my mind, inside my life, or my daughter is still out there, and this girl saw her, knew her, maybe even lived with her, and that's why she came back. Not to hurt me, not to deceive me, but to warn me, and I missed it.